Hello, good morning. My name is Ruth Rodriguez. I go by Ville Marie, which is my middle name, and currently I am the chair of the Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board. And it has been my absolute pleasure to be one of your citizens, serving almost on a voluntary basis to ensure that the environmental requirement, particularly as it pertains to air contaminants in the basin, are safeguarded so that everybody here in San Diego can live a more productive and healthier life.
A variance is an administrative order granting temporary relief from a district rule. If one is granted, a variance will allow a facility to continue to operate even though they're in violation, as long as they're taking steps to return to compliance.
There is 4 other members besides me with each their own expertise that is going to ask you very specific questions about why are you requesting this variance. So we have a member, who is a doctor, another member who is a lawyer, a member, who is a meteorology or meteorological scientist. I am an organic chemist, and another member is an engineer.
In making a decision, the hearing board considers the severity of the violation, whether the situation is beyond the facility's reasonable control, the extent of excess emissions that would be caused by granting a variance, and the advantages and disadvantages to the facility and the public of granting or denying a variance. What is the process to obtain a variance? There are 4 steps to this process. First, filling out the petition forms. Second, filing the forms with the clerk of the hearing board. Third, preparing for the hearing. And fourth, attending the hearing itself. Petition forms and a list of filing fees are online and may be downloaded from the district's website at www.sdapcd.org. Follow the menus to compliance programs and then variance and hearing board. This chart shows the required forms and filing fee for each variance type. There are 5 types of variances. They vary in how long they last, how soon they can be heard, as well as the criteria needed to obtain the variance. First, a 90-day variance. A 90-day variance is appropriate when a facility can come into compliance within 90 days. This type of variance requires a 10-day advance public notice. Second, a regular variance is appropriate when a facility needs more than 90 days to comply with air quality rules. Usually limited to a year, it may extend longer if justified by a detailed schedule showing how the facility will come into compliance. Since a regular variance requires a longer period of public notice of 30 days compared to 10 days, an interim variance can provide the facility with protection until a regular variance hearing can be heard. Fourth, a product variance is appropriate for a manufacturer of a product used in San Diego County when that product does not comply with the air quality rules. The variance applies to the product and not to any single facility. Though generally limited to a year, it may extend longer if justified by a detailed compliance schedule. Fifth, an emergency variance. These are appropriate for violations that occur without warning, such as a result of a sudden equipment breakdown, a power failure, or an accidental fire. This type of variance does not require advance public notice and is limited to 30 days. There's a cover sheet which contains required facility information. Here you can select the variance type. And in this portion of the form, you can briefly explain the rule you're in violation of, the applicable permit number, calculated excess emissions, and explain any attachments that you're adding. The second page is the proposed set of findings. For most types of variances, the hearing board must decide that all of the following findings are true.
1, the petitioner needs to understand the rule that they will be or are in violation with. The next finding, finding B, which is generally the hardest finding to make, is to explain why your non-compliance or your imminent non-compliance to the rules under finding A that you will not comply to. What are the reasons why you will not comply to those rules? And if you can't comply to those rules or cannot get a variance, then what are the taking of property that you will experience as a petitioner? How much money will you lose? How many employees will you have to lay off as a result of not being able to comply to the rules? These are very hard decisions and very hard findings to make. And if you can make them as a petitioner, it'll make it easier for the board members to make those findings themselves. Finding C talks about what the effects are if you were not to get a variance. Would it make the air quality better? Would it make it substantially better as it weighs against the taking of property that would occur under finding B? And so you need to come prepared to talk about what those impacts may be, and are they too costly for you as a petitioner if you were not to get the variance. Finding D is, have you considered curtailing your operation in order to avoid a variance? Well, can you lower your emissions so it's not an issue? And again, the key word here is consideration. Have you considered a plan to do that? Is it not feasible to put that plan together? And if it is not feasible, then you need to be able to explain that to the board. E is, how will you reduce excess emissions if you indeed do get a variance? So by reducing excess emissions, you need to explain what offsets, what other measures you will take to keep or limit those emissions. Oftentimes it's a condition in the variance itself that limits either your operations to hours or the amount of materials that you use or other means in which to limit emissions. So come prepared to understand how you can limit the emissions associated with the variance that you would get under this action. And finally, item F, which is, how are you going to report your excess emissions during the period of the variance? And typically this is done through reports that are issued directly to the APCD. And again, being prepared to understanding how you will present those excess emissions and determine what they are during the variance period as you operate under a variance is very important to the variance process.
The information provided should show how diligent the facility is being in trying to return to compliance as soon as possible. Variances cannot be granted to allow relief from the consequences of a past violation, a public nuisance, such as odors or threats to public health, construction or operation of a process or equipment without a permit, or violations of the California Health and Safety Code or California Code of Regulations, such as an air toxic control measure. For Title V facilities, as the EPA does not recognize variances granted under federal law, the variance will not protect the facility from enforcement by the federal EPA or citizen suits under the Federal Clean Air Act. Step 2. Filing the petition. Submit the completed petition, including the filing fee, to the clerk of the hearing board, located in room 402 of the County Administration Center at 1600 Pacific Highway in downtown San Diego. Once you realize you may need to apply for a variance, submit the forms as soon as possible. The clerk will only schedule your hearing after receiving the forms and filing fee. Step 3. Preparing for the hearing. To prepare for the hearing, carefully review the district's response to your request for petition. You'll usually receive this by email approximately 1 week before the hearing. The section entitled District Position may highlight any deficiencies or problems the district has found with the request for variance. Please correct any of these deficiencies and contact the district if you have questions. You may bring an attorney or a technical consultant with you to the hearing, but it is not required. Please remember that whoever represents the facility should be prepared and should be able to discuss the rules in violation, why the situation is beyond the facility's reasonable control, what steps are being taken to come into compliance, and any potential excess emissions associated with the variance. Step 4, the variance hearing. Petitions for variances are heard by the Air Pollution Control District Hearing Board at the County Administration Center, located, again, downtown at 1600 Pacific Highway, in the same building as the clerk. Variance hearings resemble informal courtroom proceedings. They welcome people to the hearing, then they swear in witnesses. There may be other petitions on the agenda besides yours. The hearing board usually listens to a presentation by the district first, and then to a presentation by the variance applicant. District staff may argue for or against the granting of a variance. District staff may also suggest certain conditions be imposed on a variance. Hearing board members will ask questions of district staff and the variance applicant. The public may also attend and present any information. The hearing board evaluates how the evidence applies to the required findings and makes a decision on the petition during the hearing. If a variance is granted, the facility is subject to the conditions of the variance during the entire term of the variance. As these conditions are the law for your facility during your variance, be sure to listen carefully and write down the conditions if you need to. You will receive a final order in a few weeks. For more specific questions or for assistance in completing the petition forms, please contact the district's Compliance Division or Small Business Assistant at 858-586-2650. You may also contact the clerk of the hearing board for procedural questions. The clerk's phone number is 619-531-5434.